This weekend, Pope Benedict, the retired Pope, I should say, released a letter giving his opinion on the continuing sex scandal issues. Long story short, he blames the 60s. He thinks the sexual revolution in America is why priests are getting handsy and gropey and rapey. Obviously, that's absurd. I mean, this is insane. Like, I don't think anybody is seeing this letter and thinking, like, oh, yeah, he's got a point. Really interesting. I read an article a while ago that said this type of scandal has been plaguing the church for literally hundreds of years. About once every 100 years or so, there comes up a moment where the church has to be like, "Ooh, sorry, we're a little rapey, guys. We'll change." And then, functionally speaking, they never do. And so it's kind of a systemic historical problem with the Catholic Church that's just continuing and continuing. It's not a modern problem, and so it's absolutely just bonkers that Benedict is coming forward now to be like, "Oh, no, this was never a problem until the '60s." Right now there's a Vatican meeting going on with all these cardinals and church leaders trying to figure out what they can do to make a change to the system. Ultimately, though, I mean, if it is this historical problem that's been going on for so long, like, wouldn't they have made a change by now? Like, wouldn't this have been fixed if they could? I just think it's kind of a showpiece. Here, look at this thing we're doing, and we're going to brush it under the rug. Go ahead, Tony.
I have a question, Professor.
Yes.
Why do they have to have a meeting to try and figure out what they should do when shouldn't they stop covering up when the people rape?
I would think that, in fact.
Have they tried that?
Yeah, another article I read talked about why the hierarchical structure is what was, to blame, essentially. And
so don't hate the player, hate the game?
Yeah, but I think that's stupid because, like, the point of the article was that because the church is not one unified thing, it's broken into like domains, and each domain has a leader, and then there's a sub leader, and so on. And
but I'm sure they know how all the money works, right?
Oh yeah, there's no problem getting the money.
There's no problem with money.
In fact, there's no problem getting the money that you deposit into their coffers to the lawyers that then defend pedophiles in court.
Yes.
That's one of the fun.
That's a well-oiled and well-greased machine. But ask them to, stop covering up for child rapists and fostering a culture of acceptability for that type of behavior. And yeah, it's.
And I can already hear people, because I've heard it 1,000 times, and I've gotten so many downvotes and so much opprobrium for saying it out loud in other places. But it's not an individual, like, oh, there's just a couple of bad priests. There's some pretty strong evidence that indicates Pope Frankie knew this was going on. There's pretty strong evidence that there's cardinals who knew it was going on. There's pretty strong evidence that some cardinals were going on, as it were. It's pretty clear that it's a systemic issue from bottom to top, and there's a lot of these guys out there that are doing some pretty inappropriate things with kids. It's not an individual, well, that was just a bad apple.
Well, no, and I mean, does a large section of the population still think that I am, like, tinfoil hat if I say that they're covering up these? I thought that was common knowledge that the church was covering up and moving these rapists around and doing all kinds of other things to facilitate not having to punish them or turn them into the authorities.
I thought that too. But like when I've said these things on Reddit, people will come forward and be like, "Oh no, that doesn't happen. You don't have any proof of
okay,
that."
Well, let's not Reddit, but I thought this was well documented.
It is. Like, that's the thing. It is documented.
Okay, well then, I mean, I don't care what people are saying on Reddit in the sense that I can remember listening to interviews on these topics as much as 2 decades ago when I was a little kid about how the church, this guy X raped a bunch of kids and then somehow he's still a priest and he's in this other country now because they punished him by transferring him.
Yep.
Effectively.
Oh, and it gets even grosser because even if they do defrock them and kick them out of the priesthood, a lot of the times they'll still receive glowing letters of recommendation from their church or from their cardinal or from their bishop or whomever is over them. They'll get these glowing letters of recommendation to wherever they go next. And one of the really egregious cases I read about, the guy left the church after being accused of inappropriate behavior with kids and went and worked for Disney World, where he was given glowing recommendations that said things like, he's a great guy.
Wow. Ironically, I was taking a drink of coffee when you said that, and I wanted to do the Disney like and spit everything,
just all
over my laptop. You can't see it watching the video, but I'm sitting at my laptop, and all my I'm a musician, so all my studio equipment is behind me, so I can't spit liquid, but I wanted to desperately because it would have. I hate this phrase, but I'll use it. It would have been apropos. So the church continues to just basically be a creeper factory. And it seems so obvious. It's all these men who clearly have, hero complexes and any number of other, we're not allowed to criticize men of the cloth. We can't talk about their motives. Or the fact that pretty much every priest I've ever met is creepy as fuck. And every priest I've met has always been accompanied by idiots who make sure to tell me that he's so normal. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, he's, Father McFuckface is so approachable. He's not one of these aloof, formulaic priest type. There's always these people apologizing for these guys that are just sexually repressed weirdos who have spent their whole life just being the arm of an organization that has the only, to my knowledge, like the only real historical equivalent of like a bad rap sheet would be like fucking the Nazis or what? Like, I can't think of anything else other than the Catholic Church that has done so much killing and dissemination of bad information. You can get into like what they've done in Africa with contraception and so on. So the list goes on. And these are the people who, in a country where there's plenty of, if you have to be a Christian, you could at least be a fucking Protestant. At least reach down and grab your nuts and be a Lutheran or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mostly a joke. It's all the same to me in terms of how stupid it is. But at the very least, I would not want to be associated with the Catholic Church because it is an institution of violence, control, oppression, you name the genocide. The term that the conservatives love to throw around right now is, you're witch hunting me. You're witch hunting me. Like, it's ironic because, like, you're the witch hunt people.
And I think it's also worth noting, I've never once been a part of an organization that had to convene a meeting of leaders to decide whether or not they should do something to stop rapists from touching little kids.
Yep.
Nor would I ever continue to be in such an organization. if I found out, like, there's a weekend meeting of these guys to decide this thing, bye, I'm not a member anymore, I'm out.
We're both American citizens, obviously. So, but I would argue that being, I didn't choose where I was born. And so I do what I can to buck against what the inherent, the organization, that I'm a part of as a result of being a citizen. Like, I try and do what I can to undermine those systems, but I certainly don't go out and join other groups who, I think it's a good question. Like, if you go down to join a club or a belief system or anything, and if you ask them, like, so did you ever think that people were doing magic and so you burned them? And if they answer yes, I think you can safely assume that that's a group that you don't want to be a part of.
And it's so fucked up too, because like when you say it out loud, it sounds like a joke. Like I'm trying not to laugh because like it sounds hilarious, like sitcom TV.
Okay,
but it's 100% true.
You could ask, did your organization ever send out a massive number of acolytes to anally torture people whom you thought had beliefs that differed from yours slightly on very specific elements of dogma?
And perhaps these people were also unexpected. No one ever expected them.
No one expects the Inquisition.
I mean, it's just a really dark, creepy thing. And the weird thing is I've spent some time around a few Catholics here and there, not like best friends or anything. And they'll say these really weird things like, well, yeah, and like the church has gotten kind of a bad rap in the last few years.
Oh, you mean for all the children raping and the burning of people and
I'm sitting there going, like biting my fingers because it's like, yeah, the things you were saying, like I have to imagine that like the power of the church's indoctrination must be beyond compare, beyond anything any other person has ever experienced at any point. Because those people will go there and then come home and go, well, it's gotten a bit of a bad rap, but ours is great. We know Pastor Bob Reverend Bob is great, and he's just fantastic. So I mean, it's too bad to hear about that over there in Kentucky or wherever. But it's not like it's everything I've read. It's indicated it's not isolated. Like your church is probably just as bad. Probably people at your mass that are there specifically for bad reasons. And you don't know about it because it's so well concealed or covered up, and it's protected under this whole confessional, because the priests can confess things to other priests, and so there were other priests that knew, oh yeah, Bob's a bit rapey, but it was part of confession, so I can't say anything. Fuck that.